Welcome back to Coincidence Crafting. We're getting better every time, and I know I said no more sewing, but you know, here we are. So here I have a piece of fabric that I had cut previously for doing dice, but I decided not to use this piece, and I'm going to use it for this instead. But it is 9.5 by 13.5. It does not have to be quite this size. It's really going to depend on what your embroidery hoop size is. This one works about, well, for that it has a little extra, but they usually come in 2 pieces, and this part can get bigger and smaller, and that can make it so that it fits different fabrics differently. You're also going to need some stabilizer. This one is a no-show mesh, and it's a tearaway. It's a sheer cutaway, so you have to use scissors to take it off when you're done with it. And I'm going to use sewing scissors, my machine, which is over here that you can't see too well yet, and I'm going to use this guy whose name is suddenly gone for me to cut my stabilizer to about the same size, just slightly smaller than this. And so once I've done that, which I don't need to show you me cutting, we'll move to the machine and I'll show you what I've done. So we're not to the machine yet, but I have the fabric, the stabilizer cut, and I just have it on the wrong side. It doesn't. There's some that you can iron on and different things like that, but this one's just loose. So I'm not an expert at doing this still, but you usually kind of want to get it so that you have stabilizer on all the different sides. And then you also want to match up. This one has a little arrow and an arrow, so you're supposed to match those up. It can work without that, but it's advised to match those up. And then you just pop this in here. This is a little bit extra big because when I'm doing dice, they need a little bit of extra fabric around. So I'm just pushing this through. Why are you too tight? And since it's too tight, I'm going to loosen it, and then I can fit it. And get it to look nice. Pull it through just a little bit. Different fabrics have different thicknesses, and so they fit in here differently. That's why you need to be able to tighten and loosen it. But what you kind of want to do is you want it to kind of sound like a drum for how tight it is so it doesn't flex too much. This guy's still a little bit loose. But we're going to move the camera and I'll show you what we do on the machine. Alright, so here is my machine. Just finished turning it on, and usually I have it set up like this for normal sewing, but this is the embroidery connector thing. And you can't really see it, but there's a little slide that goes up and down. It moves this way, and it connects into here. This is the part you don't ever want to grab it by, because that's the part of the arm that moves, and this part moves back and forth, and this moves this way. And so to change it for embroidery, I need to take off the needle plate cover. It'll be mad at me because it's turned on, so it doesn't like that. And I will put in a new bobbin thing, which I can't remember the name of, but I will put it on the screen. And I put it in right there. And I match up, there's a little white dot, and I match up to the little arrow. Ow. And then I go ahead and I swap out the foot here. Take off the whole thing. Usually I detach this part of the foot right here. And then I also take off the needle, because this is a normal universal needle, which you don't want to use for embroidery. And then we have our embroidery needles, and we have our embroidery foot. So the embroidery foot is a very interesting shape. This part goes over the shaft here. It hooks onto this screw, and this is where the needle goes through right down there. You can see there's little nicks because it's been placed wrong before and gotten out of alignment, but I hook on that little slot that I showed you, and I get my magnetic screwdriver to play nice. Oop, come on. It's nice, but then it slides off really easy because it's attracted to everything metal, which is all of that. I put my needle plate cover it back over, and then I would just put in my needle. Just put it right in there. I guess I'll go ahead and show you since I'm already doing it. Let's see, slide it right into that, and then tighten that. And then the last step is to take this, put that guy up, insert, and it will beep at me and everything because it's realized that it's got the embroidery mode going on. So it says the carriage will move, keep your hands away. It's So it's testing out the movement, and then I am ready to embroider. But that's how my machine is changed to an embroidery machine. And of course, my caveat, everybody's machine is going to be different, but this is the Brother Enovis NS2750D. So that's mine. So I just hooked it onto the 2 clamps here. I lower the lever, and this is where it's fun. You just go. And here we are, and I'm just going to do a voiceover this time. We'll see how this works. So as you can see, it's doing just these like preliminary stitches, and it doesn't look very pretty yet, but it's just laying out the basic pattern for where the stitches are going to be. And as you keep watching it, and this is at 400% speed, so it's fast, but it's not this fast. This is really fast because the entire patch to do just the embroidery took about 50 minutes of just stitching. So I didn't think you wanted to sit through 50 minutes of video, and I didn't want to edit 50 minutes of video. So we just cut it down to a lot less. It's still a big video, and I'm going to try and figure out how I can make shorter videos, but I figured you would want to see the whole process. So as you can see, it's filling in the actual stitches here, and it looks a lot more like a patch. And you can do, it's the same process for when you do like things like if you were putting embroidery on a skirt or on a shirt or anything else, or like a dog bandana or whatever you're going to do. And the only difference that you'd really do with those is that instead of cutting it out at the end like you'll see me do, you would make sure that it's lined up exactly where you want it to be when you put it into the embroidery hoop. And there are guides and different things for how to do that, so just Google on YouTube, or if there's a big request for me to show you how to do that, then I can do that too. But so yeah, so that's kind of how it's going. And the website that I did it through is, I did not design my patch myself, as that takes really expensive programs and things like that. And there are cheaper ones, but apparently they're not as good as what I've heard. So I went through a website called galaxydigitizing.com, and they did a great job. They're US based, so if you're not in the US, I don't know if they're your best option, but they were really fast, and the patch cost me $20 to design, and now I can make as many as I want. You can also have them make them if you want, make the actual patches, but that costs you per patch. But they were really fast, they were really helpful. They called to clarify stuff, since I think I got confusing about something anyway, but it worked out great. And that was my experience with it, and I have done, I think that's the only thing I've really digitized, is I did the previous patch as well as this one, since we changed our logo. But for the podcast, the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, which you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Cosmere Studies for all 3 of them. And I'm going to put some music on now, and you can just enjoy, and you can skim however you feel like it. Oh, we have it all embroidered now, and it's just still inside the hoop, so we just need to kind of push the back and I pop it out. And we have our fabric. We can put the hoop to the side. So the next step is you can either go one of two ways. You can trim all of the little strings that go in between first, or you can cut it out and then trim them. I usually trim this and then do that, just because it's a little bit easier. So you can use nice sharp fabric scissors. You don't want to use little weak ones. You can also cut out just close to it and then work right next to it, which is what I'm going to do, just because it's, you want to be precise and you don't want to have all of this extra fabric just right there. So ideally you fit more than one thing when you're doing embroidery, but that's what I'm doing here. Okay, that's the ideal spot. So I'm just going to cut right next to it, but try not to catch those blue threads at all, because then it will unravel, and that's where the fray check comes in. And I may come back and trim it just a little bit closer again after. Ideally you don't use a fabric that's going to clash. You'd use something white or something close to what the border is going to be, but red is what I had available and already pre-cut. We have our patch cut out. I'll probably trim that down slightly more, and then I will just apply some fray check, which you can actually sort of see now. This one's Dritz brand, but you can do any other brand you want, and you would just open this up. There's a little thing there, and you just go around and do it. Just a little bit of fabric safe glue. Here's the different embroidery threads I use. This one's the bobbin thread. It's just a white. Here's a bobbin. This one is my machine's bobbin. And you can refill it either on your machine or on it with a bobbin thread or a bobbin winder. This is the white I used. It's a Floriani brand, but you can use lots of other ones. Floriani is one of the better ones. So then there's the blue. Here's the yellow. I kind of want it to be a little less bright because it's kind of a bright yellow, but this is the yellow that I have. So eventually I may change to a slightly lighter yellow. The other thing you need are embroidery scissors. Yeah. Okay, so there are little tiny threads that one that jumped from spot to spot, like right here, and in between all these letters, and then between the yellow right there and right there. And so I'm just gonna trim all of these, and you want to take your time and be very careful, because if you trim something in the wrong spot, then you will have a thread that stays loose and it looks bad, and it will unravel things. This one, where are you at? So you just work your way around and snip all those little threads. So not a ton of work, but just a little bit. And here's what the back looks like. There's a few little threads sticking out still, and you can trim those too if you want. Depends on how clean you want the back to be. If you want it to be an iron-on, there are different materials you can do to just attach them to that. So you would attach that to the back of it, and then you can iron it on things and follow the directions for that. But if you want to sew it on, this is as far as you need it to be. You can just do the fray check around the edge. I'm going to trim it just a little bit closer off camera, just so it's a little bit smoother, and I need to do that closer to my face. And then you are good to go. I think they have like a little more string there, but otherwise this is our lovely patch. So there you go.